Great catching up with the general over there at Syndicate MMA. You can see the sign behind you. Also, the coach of Merab Dvalishvili, who came off a very impressive victory over Cory Sandhagen at UFC 320. John, how you doing, man?
Great, man. Like just still kind of coming down from all that craziness, and definitely highs and lows. That Saturday night was a pretty crazy one. So it's really nonstop around here, and the next day it was, kids' birthday parties and taking care of that stuff, and then back in here hitting the grind, 9 a.m. this morning doing privates and teaching practice. So I still haven't had a whole lot of time to decompress, but yeah, man, everything's good. It's I'm happy and sad. Obviously, it's a definitely a mixed bag of emotions.
For sure. And yeah, I should mention also in the corner of Khalil Rountree. We'll talk about that in a sec too, because that was a wild fight. But how did the fight play out with Merab and Cory to your expectations? I know you said there might have been a finish there, and it certainly looked like it was going to be finished in that second round. But just kind of looking back, did the fight kind of play out to your expectations?
Yeah, I expected Merab to dominate the fight. I expected to dominate past round one. I thought would be the first and only round maybe that Cory would take if if it played out that way, just to get. I'm fine with Merab getting his timing, getting his feet, and we've been working on that process too, even in getting there quicker, where it's like a minute or two, we've got the reads and we're moving forward and we're doing what we need to do. In a 5-round fight, though, I allow him to kind of make sure that he's feels comfortable before we get really going. But past that, man, yeah, it went exactly kind of how I thought it might play out. I knew Cory would be tough to finish. Said that multiple times, that if we don't finish him, which he's really tough to finish, it's not for lack of trying, and obviously we came really, really close to the knockout. And then there's a couple things I feel like we could have got back into a little more submission attempts and some things, but Cory was so good. He's very well trained, well planned, game plan to come in there and defend some of the stuff. And again, I always tell my guys, when you find the path to victory, we don't really need to come off the path. Like, you stay to the path to victory, you stay on what's going to get it done. And if in that process, we're able to get that finish, or we're able to find it, then great. There will be times, and I do think there was times where Merab could have gone after the neck a little bit more and some stuff like that. But it's just a growing period. We're literally one fight away from him really kind of starting to believe in his skill set. And I think his submission skill set. And I think even now he's now going to believe in his hands even more. And I think that we really will start to see we're getting close to every fight, is going to have that potential submission or knockout threat. And, not to say anything, but like, we are competing at the best. We're competing with the best in the world. Like, every guy Rob fights is the next best guy in the world. So the next best guy. So we're always fighting the best guy. We're always going up against the best coaches. We're always going up the best, well-prepared fighters. And it's not always that easy just to go out there, especially in these lighter weights, and just get the finish. But again, it won't be for lack of trying. The man, I think is gonna be a real terror here. He already is a terror, but even a real finishing terror soon.
Did you think the fight was going to be stopped in the second? I was watching at home and I was going, it looks like it's over, and Cory survives to his credit, but that looked pretty close with the referee not stepping in.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really close. Hats off to Cory for staying moving and staying awareness, having the awareness to be able to move out of those positions where it was almost getting stopped. That's a spot where I'll go back with Merab and say, hey, here's the time where we could have, instead of going back to, he's just such a, he's such a machine. He gonna grab you and re-wrestle and go. That's a time where we should have probably backed off and just trusted in them hands and started swinging them things, and he probably does get the finish. That's just stuff on now, more things that I have. Okay, awesome. Now we've got a game plan. I've got an idea of how to get there with you when these things do happen. And we just add more tools, add more confidence, and that won't happen again. Next time, I promise you, next time that happens, when he has somebody finished, he will knock them out in those spots.
I
But,
know.
Goddard's a great referee too. And again, Cory went all 5 rounds. So clearly, he was still there.
He certainly was, and sort of asked about his next opponent after the fight. I know Petr Yan's name did come up. That was a name that you and I sort of talked about as well. Potentially if Merab won this fight. But I also asked you about that Umar Nurmagomedov and Mario Bautista fight. If Mario Bautista goes out there and wins, and I know you feel like he can do that, is it a possibility that Mario could step in there just because it's a fresh matchup?
My gut tells me no. I think he could be next in line. I think let's say if he pulls off something big,
Yeah.
if he went out there and finished Umar and completely dominated him, then anybody's capable of jumping the line. When you go out there and you get these dominant finishes, or you get these big knockouts, or you get these big submissions, everybody's capable of jumping the line if the UFC sees it as a marketable selling fight. It's a business. At the end of the day, this is a business. They don't care about the fighters' feelings and care about, rankings and these things. It's a business to them, and it's a very well-run business. These I say it and say it again. These guys know what they're doing. They know how to sell fights and create fights. So they're going to put the best fight out there that the people want to see, or the most marketable fight. So if he comes off this fight and he's got a lot of steam underneath him, then of course he could. But I think right now the clear cut, and from what I'm hearing, the clear cut guy challenger is going to be Petr Yan, whether it's December or further down the line.
Yeah, and that was going to be my other question. It looked like Merab came out of this relatively unscathed. Is December still a possibility if he wants to get in there? What would you like as a coach? I'm sure you would like a bit more time.
Yes, always as coach, if we have more time is never a bad thing. I don't want him to get burnt out. I don't think he's the kind of guy that gets burnt out. Merab is one of those guys that truly loves fighting. He loves the process. Even when he's not in camp, he's still training like he's in camp. He trains like a madman. There is no off switch to that guy. He might go on a vacation for a week or do some media and do his, a sponsor stuff, but like the dude will be back in the gym guaranteed before this week is up training. So it's kind of hard to tell him not to do that when it's just his daily life. Going to the fight, like I guarantee you, he has harder rounds in here than he does in the fight. He has a harder go in here than he does in the fight. He gets hit more, does this more here than he does in a fight. So to me, it's just that, it really comes down to the weight cut. Like, does he feel like doing that weight cut again? Does he feel like doing those things? If the opportunity, I will tell you this, if it is presented to him and they say, hey, we want you to do this, he's going to do it. I know the man. Like, it's another record. No one's ever done it. He will do it. And also I have enough belief in him that he's fully capable of doing it. If I thought that he couldn't, then I would say, Merab, we need, let's sit back and do some time. But there's a couple things floating around. We got to talk to his manager, Danny Ruby, and there's some ideas. There's some other ideas on the table, but I think if Merab goes to them and says, dude, I want this fight, I really want to do it, I think, he's done enough. I think they'll let him do it.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I don't know how this works, but it probably would make things easier if he does fight Yan next, because Yan also has Daniel Rubenstein as his manager. So maybe that makes the process a bit easier. One less person to be involved in the negotiations.
It makes it easier for us, harder for him. Danny's had Peter for a long time, and he's not a guy that really likes to. He doesn't like to have his guys fighting each other. He does everything he can to not have that happen. But again, this is a business, and unfortunately in fighting, it's a numbers business a lot of times. But, the one thing I know about Ruby is he does care about his fighters, and he tries to avoid that at all costs. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But it really just comes down if the UFC wants it. If the UFC, I heard the other night that they need a main event, and then I heard relatively shortly thereafter that they don't. So it just really comes down to, what they want.
Let's talk about Khalil Rountree. What a fight that was. It's one of those fights where I know Khalil ended up losing, but he looked so good in those first 2 rounds. And I think everyone watching at home was going, he's going to win this. Like, he was ahead 2 rounds to going into that 3rd round. What do you sort of take away from that fight overall? Obviously, you don't get the win. Yuri gets the comeback, but Khalil looked probably the best he's ever looked against a really high-level opponent in Yuri Prochazka.
There's definitely a lot to take away from it. There's a lot as far as on the coaching side and things that I'm responsible for to make sure that they don't happen again. And things that I've got to make sure that my fighter knows how to do and knows when to do it, even in the worst type of situations, being pressured, getting beat up. And so there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of responsibility on me that I have to go and make sure that he is ready for those situations. Those are two fights now, with Pereira and him, where we were this close, and we can't, you're not going to get so many more chances. So we have to make the best and take the opportunities when they come, and can't, this is the good thing and the bad thing about the sport. It's what makes MMA great is just like that. Just never know what's going to happen. One punch, one kick, one this, one that changes everything. But there are a lot of things that I know that I can do better for Khalil, and I know that Khalil can do better for himself. And those are the things that we're going to do. And I believe that he still has a championship mindset and a championship goal. And I don't think that changes because of this. And hopefully, we'll sit down this week and we'll watch the fight, and we'll go over what we, the things that we did good, the things that we did bad, what I can do better for him. That was a whole chaotic, really, really chaotic night and process. So it was just, it's still kind of a blur to me. But yeah, there's just a lot more that, like I said, there's a lot more. And this is the greatest thing, even about Merab with Khalil and Greg. There's so much more room to grow. He can get better. There's a lot of things that we can do differently that will make Khalil better. Not changing Khalil. Khalil's DNA is what it is. Everybody has a fight DNA at the core of like what kind of fighter you are, what you love to do, what is in your DNA. And to stand there and throw them things, that's part of him. And I'm not going to change that. We just have to find ways to do it better, and find ways that when it's not working, how to back off of that. And I think that he's got, like I said, so much more room to grow. Marab has so much more room to grow, and he's the best in the world. It's crazy to be at the position that we're in with these guys, at the top, the very top, and still be able to learn. Like I know there's a couple boxes that I didn't check off for Khalil that I got to make sure next time they are checked off. And I think we're gonna do it. I think he's gonna come back and do just fine.
What did you think of Alex Pereira's win in the main event? I don't know if I'm sure you've caught the replay by now because it wasn't very long, that fight.
Yeah, I watched it. I watched it in the back on TV, and amazing. And I kind of had the sense of that was going to be the thing. I've stated time and time and time again that Pereira, I believe, was really maybe not so focused. And after talking to his coaches and people at that time, there was a lot going on in that camp before, and he showed. And once, I spoke to the guys during the week, and they just said, this is the most focused prayer they've ever seen, the most driven prayer they've ever seen. And so when you have a guy like that who is just has the ungodly power and skill set that he has, when he's focused and driven, I don't think there's many people in the world that can beat him. So I thought it was amazing, and I'm happy for him. I like those guys. He's a great champion. He's somebody that we all like to watch, and you just can't bet against that guy anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Before we go, always got to get a little hockey talk in. Have you watched any of the Knights preseason, and how does it, feel to see Mitch Marner in a Knights jersey? It's still kind of weird for me as well.
Yeah, no, I've caught a little bit. I didn't get to go to any of the games because I've been so damn busy. Opening night's Wednesday, so we're going. We're
Nice.
going for sure on Wednesday. But yeah, I caught a little highlights. I think it's going to be rad. I think like Marner has the potential to bring something that we need for sure. And if him and Eichel get going, oh my God, like we have it's a very workman's type kind of everybody, team type of reality there at the Golden Knights, where they all work together. There is no like elevated superstar. Like even Jack, when he came over, he's supposed to be the guy, and he is the guy. He's the biggest star we have here, but he's a team player. We do need that one person to get in there and just take the lead and start smashing. We need a 40 goal guy. And Eichel can be that guy, or Marner, or both of them could be. So hopefully with the talent on the ice, man, those guys get out there and just start ripping it to pieces.
Yeah, should be good. John, thanks for the time as always. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next week in Vancouver.
All right. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.